rise of an underdog, sometimes it's the fall of a giant, and sometimes it's the moment when two completely different football philosophies collide on the biggest stage in the world. That's exactly what the 2026 World Cup final has become. On one side stands Spain, a team that has quietly transformed into the tournament's most complete side. On the other stands Argentina, a nation that has built its identity on surviving the moments that break everyone else. The trophy is the prize, but the real story is how these two teams arrived here. A few months ago, very few people would have predicted Spain to become the team nobody wanted to face. Yes, they had talented players. Yes, they played attractive football. But there were still questions. Could they create enough chances against disciplined defenses? Could they survive the chaos of knockout football? Could possession alone still win the biggest matches in modern football? Those questions followed Spain into this tournament. 4 matches later, almost every one of them had disappeared. It wasn't simply that Spain were winning, it was the way they were winning. Every opponent arrived with a different solution. Some tried pressing high before Spain could settle into their rhythm. Others defended with every player behind the ball, hoping frustration would eventually force mistakes. A few even attempted to match Spain technically, believing the only way to beat them was to challenge them at their own game. Different plans, different styles. The outcome never changed. Spain controlled the match, controlled the tempo, and eventually controlled the result. That consistency is what transformed them from contenders into something much more intimidating. Somewhere between the opening match and the semi-final, Spain's looking like a team that understood exactly how to solve every problem placed in front of them. They no longer passed for the sake of possession. Every pass had intention. Every movement created space. Every pass invited pressure before exploiting it. Watching them felt less like watching a football match and more like watching a carefully planned sequence where every opponent unknowingly played the role Spain had already written for them. For the rest of the football world, that evolution has been fascinating. For Argentina, it presents an entirely different challenge. Because this isn't the Spain they spent years preparing to face. The old Spain could dominate possession without hurting you. The new Spain turns possession into pressure, pressure into mistakes, and mistakes into goals. They don't just force you to defend, they force you to think faster than you're comfortable thinking. Against a team that operates with that level of precision, one hesitation is often enough to decide an entire match. That's why this final feels different from so many that came before it. It's not simply a contest between two gifted squads. It's a meeting between two teams that have reached the same destination by following completely different roads. Spain believe control is the key to victory. Argentina believe football can never truly be controlled. One trusts preparation, the other trusts resilience. One tries to shape the game from the first whistle, the other waits patiently for the single moment capable of changing everything. And history has a habit of rewarding both. That is what makes this World Cup final so compelling. It isn't just about lifting a trophy. It's about discovering which philosophy still survives when the pressure becomes greater than anything tactics alone can solve. Because every great football team eventually reaches the same moment. The moment where talent is no longer enough. The moment where systems are no longer enough. The moment where 90 minutes decide whether years of work become history or heartbreak. And for Spain and Argentina, that moment has finally arrived. For years, Spain carried a reputation that was both a compliment and a criticism. They were admired for their ability to dominate possession, dictate the rhythm of a match, and make opponents chase shadows for long stretches of the game. But as football evolved, that style began to lose its edge. Teams became more organized defensively. They were happy to let Spain have the ball, confident that endless passing meant very little if it never turned into clear chances. Time and again, Spain would leave the pitch having controlled every statistic that mattered on paper, yet somehow walk away without the result they expected. The football was beautiful, but beauty alone was no longer enough to win the biggest tournaments. That realization forced Spain to confront a difficult truth. Their identity didn't need replacing, but it did need evolving. Instead of treating possession as the objective, they started using it as a weapon. The ball was no longer something to protect, it became something to manipulate opponents with. Every pass carried a purpose beyond just keeping control. every movement was designed to lure defenders into making one tiny mistake. It wasn't about overwhelming teams with constant attacks. It was about patiently waiting until the perfect opportunity appeared, then striking with ruthless efficiency. You can see that transformation throughout this World Cup. Spain haven't relied on moments of individual brilliance to reach the final. They've relied on collective intelligence. Watch them closely and you'll notice something unusual. Their players rarely force difficult passes. They rarely panic when space disappears. Instead, they keep moving, rotating positions, and circulating the ball until the opposition begins to lose its shape. Then, almost without warning, the match changes. A midfielder finds a pocket of space that didn't exist 5 seconds earlier. A fullback overlaps at exactly the right moment. A forward makes a run that pulls an entire defensive line out of position. The move looks simple when it's finished, but it was created several passes before anyone in the stadium realized what was happening. That's what separates this Spanish side from previous generations. They don't just react to what their opponents do, they influence what their opponents are about to do. The best football teams don't just control possession, they control decisions. They make defenders step forward when they should stay back. They make midfielders leave spaces they never intended to leave. By the time those decisions reveal themselves as mistakes, Spain is already celebrating the goal. It's a level of control that few international teams have managed in modern football. Tournament football is usually unpredictable. Momentum shifts quickly. One mistake can change everything. Yet Spain have spent this World Cup making chaos look almost impossible. Every match has unfolded at their pace. Every opponent has eventually found themselves trapped inside a game that Spain designed rather than the one they wanted to play. That's why so many people have started calling Spain the tournament's most complete team. They defend together, they attack together, they press with intelligence rather than desperation. They understand when to accelerate and when to slow the game down. Most importantly, they never seem rushed. Even under pressure, they continue playing with a calmness that frustrates opponents and slowly drains their belief. But every style of football, no matter how dominant it appears, carries a hidden risk. Because the more control you depend on, the more dangerous it becomes when that control begins to slip. And if there's one team left in this tournament that understands how to survive those moments better than anyone else, it's Argentina. Not because they're more talented, not because they're faster, it's one team that controls the moment. If Spain represent control, then Argentina represents something far more unpredictable. They are a team that has learned to live without certainty. Throughout football history, the greatest Argentine sides have rarely been remembered for dominating every minute of every match. Instead, they've been remembered for dominating the moments that mattered most. That's an important difference, especially in a World Cup. League football rewards consistency over 38 matches. A World Cup doesn't. It asks a far simpler question. When everything is on the line, who can handle the biggest moment better than everyone else? That's where Argentina becomes such a fascinating opponent. Unlike many of the teams Spain have faced, Argentina don't panic when they don't have the ball. They don't measure success by possession statistics or passing percentages. If they spend long periods defending, they remain patient. If the match becomes physical, they embrace it. If the rhythm slows to a crawl, they don't feel uncomfortable. In many ways, that's exactly how they've built their identity over the past few years. They've become experts at surviving matches that refuse to unfold according to plan. That's a dangerous quality against a team like Spain. Most opponents become frustrated when Spain keep the ball for minutes at a time. They start pressing higher than they intended. Midfielders abandon their positions trying to win possession. Defenders step out too aggressively. Slowly, discipline disappears. Spain thrive on those moments because every rushed decision creates another opening. Argentina, however, rarely allow emotion to dictate their football. They understand that against elite opponents, chasing the ball often creates more problems than it solves. Instead, they wait, they stay compact. They trust that sooner or later, even the best teams leave one small opening. And that's the beauty and the cruelty of tournament football. Sometimes 90 minutes are decided by a single lapse in concentration. One misplaced pass, one defender who reacts half a second too late, one goalkeeper forced into a save he never expected to make. The margins become impossibly small. That's why art is everything. It's a mentality that has defined champions throughout football history. The greatest tournament teams understand that finals aren't won by playing perfect football. They're won by staying mentally alive when everyone else begins to fade. Argentina have repeatedly shown that ability. Even when matches become chaotic, they rarely lose their composure. Even when momentum swings against them, they continue believing another opportunity will arrive. That belief isn't accidental. It's been built through years of playing under immense pressure, where every mistake is magnified and every success becomes part of football history.